Hello listeners, we are your co-hosts Janine Bailey and Marie Quigley for the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast. Empower World brings guests who are making a difference to the world to inspire coaches and leaders who lead with mind, heart and soul. Hello and welcome listeners. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening to this podcast in the world. My name is Janine Bailey and I am the director and co-founder of Empower World. Today, I don't have the wonderful Marie Quigley, my business partner, with me. And instead, I have two amazing women, Michelle Arscott, who I have known, and you might have heard Michelle on our podcast before. I've known Michelle for, quite a few years now, Michelle, and you've come on the Empower World journey through as a coach, and I've seen you just do wonderful, amazing things as a coach across the world. And through you, Michelle, I've met the wonderful Karena Wood, who we've only met today. And already I feel a beautiful energy that's coming my way from Karena and just across the couple of states in Australia. I'm in Victoria and Karena in WA. So welcome, Karena. Welcome, Michelle. And I'm going to hand over to you both shortly, but just want to let our listeners know that today's podcast, as it is October, the month of October, which is the Health Awareness Month of October. So today we're bringing in Michelle and Karena to speak about women's health. And both of these wonderful coaches do work in women's health in their respective niches. But I'm going to hand over to you both to share what that is. So first of all, I'll welcome Karena, if I can. Karena, perhaps if you could share with our listeners a little bit about yourself before we dive in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Really privileged to be with you today. My name's Karena Wood. I'm an international fertility coach and the founder of yourfertilityhub.com. So I'm really passionate about women getting more emotional support during their fertility journey. So I don't know, many of you listening out there may have been through this journey or may know someone who's gone through this journey, but you're probably aware that it is quite stressful. But I think what people aren't really aware is that the deep impact it does have on relationships, on mental health, and the real lack of support that unfortunately is out there. It can be quite a medicalized journey, and some people are keeping it private. So it's a very tough thing to go through. And I think there really is not enough out there to helping women and their partners and families and friends through this, because often people also don't know what to say, how they can support, what they can do to help. So it's a real void that we here at Your Fertility Hub are trying to fill. We're trying to put tools out there that women can use to support themselves as they go through this journey. And I think that's our message really, is that there is support out there to reach out for that support.
Beautiful, Karena. Thank you for sharing, and again, welcome, and for explaining what you do and how you, not how you work as such, but who you work with, and really shining a light on something that, as you share, not many people are aware of the situations and circumstances that women can go through, that it can be a really lonely journey. Perhaps the sorts of things that women experience, it brings up shame, all sorts of emotions that prevents them from speaking up and knowing that actually what they're experiencing is something that potentially many women are experiencing. So really appreciate you sharing. Yeah. Thank you, Karena. And Michelle, welcome once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Janine. Thank you. So in terms of what I do, I work with a wide array of different clients. But I remember when we were training that, I think, Janine, you said that we attract clients. I believe in the universe, and that the clients that we're sent is for a reason, and often we find that we're coaching the client, but we're also coaching ourselves. So in a way, this niche just naturally found me. So I found both in Qatar and in Kenya that the clients I were attracting were stay-at-home moms, or moms who were juggling the different hats of being of parenting, so often juggling the career but also juggling the children, and then trying to find that balance. And that was something that was mirrored very much in my own life. So it's sort of the tail end of Karenna's work in a way, in terms of the next stage. So I've done a lot of work with that, and a lot of the work that I do comes from my own needs. So here in Kenya, I set up a monthly group called Coffee, Cake and Coaching. So an opportunity for women to get together during the week, because a lot of people are working, and it can be a very lonely time, especially when you have young children, or you're just not working, or perhaps a lot of these ladies are doing work that is from home or working with individual clients. So this was something that's evolved since I've been here. And through that, helping women to connect with their values and connect with their purpose. And also just an opportunity to eat cake, though we're doing it virtually now, so we have to bring our own piece of cake, but we eat it still. But it's just very important, and echoes what Karenna says about that sense of loneliness and isolation. And this is very important in terms of mental well-being, realizing that you're not alone and that there's support out there. So that's a little bit of one of the niches that I do.
Thank you, Michelle. And again, I'm hearing that beautiful work of bringing people together and shining a light on what perhaps are the challenges for women, and providing that safe place to be able to share what is coming up for them. And I'm guessing that is leading to all sorts of different types of conversations and work and outcomes for the women that you're with. So what do you believe, ladies, is perhaps the biggest challenge in the different focus, the different places that you focus on? What do you believe is potentially the biggest challenge for the women that are in those niches?
I think one of the biggest challenges is knowing where the support is, because I get a lot of this. People find me and then they're always saying, oh, we didn't know where to find you or whatever. So I think it's getting that information out, that these services are there. And I think it can be difficult. Karenna, I don't know about you in terms of getting the word out, but I think the fact is people are not always aware of these services. And obviously we're not unique in this field, but I know, like in terms of in my context, sometimes I would also struggle to perhaps refer or whatever. So I think it's getting the word out that there's services to support, and also B, knowing that you're not alone, because I think that's what happens. You can think that you're the only person. And a couple of things come to mind. So as we're talking about women's journey, another important aspect is also miscarriage. And this is also, October is also the month actually of infant loss. So again, and then we were talking earlier about menopause, and actually this month was also World Menopause Day as well. So lots of mental health issues this month. And I think one of the most important thing is for women to realize they're not alone. Because it's amazing, isn't it, that these things happen to so many people, a large percentage of the world, the population, because it's women, and yet there can still be stigma, there can still be silence, and people can still be feeling isolated. So I think from my viewpoint, it's really getting people to know that you're not alone, and that there are various supports to help you realize that what you're going through is actually human, and also in this context being a woman.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. And Karenna, what comes up for you?
Well, really echoing a lot of what Michelle said, actually, in terms of that feelings of isolation and feeling alone, and the challenges of actually reaching people. So I built an app which is called Your Fertility Toolbox app, to try and reach people where they are as well, because often now we're on our phones or we're behind screens, and even, you know, especially with COVID, it's really impacted our ability to be able to actually get together. And I think that's what the difficulty is. As women, we're actually hardwired for connection. And so we need that connection, and especially when we're going through these life challenges. So it's trying to find ways to connect with women, and connect as a community. And I think that's what's really lacking some days. We feel like we're more connected because of our technology, but actually in so many ways we feel more disconnected. And so it's ways to build that community of women, and to be able to reach together, to feel less alone. I think that's probably, echoing Michelle, the biggest challenge really is feeling isolated and alone, and the stigmas around different challenges, but also stigmas around mental health. You know, we really need to remove those blockages and to be able to talk freely around the pain of a miscarriage, or the pain of infertility, or the struggles of menopause, because, as we say, there's so many of us going through those things. So why aren't we openly talking about them?
Yes, absolutely, Karena. And, you know, it has been very heartening to see. There's been I've seen a lot more, not that I watch much TV, but I have seen a lot more promotion for groups that support mental health, perhaps from a bigger picture perspective, versus going into the niches of women and the particular areas of concern for mental health, like, as you said, miscarriage, Michelle, or not being able to have a baby, and then going through menopause or premenopause, perimenopause. So perhaps it's coming, but at the moment it's still, what I see is being promoted to support mental health is the bigger picture, which, in terms of general mental health, which is wonderful. But again, it seems that there isn't so much awareness about, you know, coaches like yourselves that are available and can support these type of challenges, because perhaps not many people would associate going to see a coach for this kind of health issue, or challenge, or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's wonderful to hear that you're potentially trailblazers in terms of creating this awareness. So
it's really interesting what you say there, Janine, around coaching, because often people think I may need to go see a counsellor or a psychologist, and but I think it's also important to put coaching in the mix, because coaching adds that motivation, inspiration, that accountability, and those other aspects which can actually be really, really helpful in a sort of health and wellness journey, where, you know, we do need, for example, with infertility, inspiration to just keep going, because it's just so hard and you get so many knockbacks and so many delays and things like that. Just needed that motivation and somebody there to hold your hand and walk you through and keep you going. And that's a very different relationship to a counsellor, and particularly with infertility circles, people often only go see a counsellor for a mandatory thing, like if they're going through surrogacy or using donor sperm or donor egg. Those are only touch points that they're having with a mental health professional. And we've got a really low uptake of the use of counsellors within clinics here, because fertility clinics must have a counsellor here in Australia, but they're just not utilised really strongly enough. So it's trying to find ways of, you know, like you were saying, promoting and being there. And now our Your Fertility Toolbox service is now available to clinics, so we can actually say we can be your support, we can be your mental health provider. We have yoga classes, we have recipes to keep people inspired, and all this sort of thing. But even that, you know, it's sort of in the future. Do you know what I mean? It's probably a little bit ahead of the wave, but it's definitely where things are going in the US, and it's definitely where I starting to hopefully see things going here in Australia and New Zealand as well.
Yeah, I hope so too, because, you know, I really do believe, as Michelle would know, through the coach training that we provide, Marie and myself, it really is about supporting people to connect with their purpose, with their values, their dreams, their aspirations, and to understand who they really are and what it is they truly want to experience in the world, but also, what are the emotions that are coming up in not only, when imagining the future, but also right now, what's coming up right now, and listening to the emotions that are coming up right now when working with someone, so that they can understand what's the wisdom here of these emotions. What am I on track with perhaps my fertility or my menopause or whatever it may be, or am I off track? So yeah, I'd love to hear what you would say to that, what you would add to that, Michelle.
Yeah, I was just so going back to what you said about, I think, you're talking about the definition of a coach. And I think, again, it's getting out there what we do, because I think that people can have a very limited belief in, understanding of what a coach can do. And the fact it is a very versatile profession, and we can really help. And I've recently become I freelance, so I wear lots of hats, but I've recently become a modern health coach. And so this concept now, this is what's happening now. The world of coaching is changing. Mental health is, again, we're still on that trajectory, but mental health is becoming more and more understood and more prominent, and people are hearing about it, but there's still a way to go. So this is a company where companies can buy mental health insurance. And when they buy this as an employee, you then have access to coaching and counselling. Now, what I really like about the modern health model is they've trained some of their coaches to be mental health coaches. So we're all ICF accredited coaches, but we've all gone through CBT training and other fields. And it's through the WHO. They did a training program for coaches. And what it is how they define it is a mental health coach is that step in between a life coach and a therapist. Because what they realized, WHO, was the fact that there is not enough therapists and counsellors for the need in this world. And obviously they were looking particularly at poorer countries, so they then have trained up their staff to have this halfway house. But I really think it's important that people realise what coaches can offer, in terms of, you don't have to necessarily, obviously we can't negate therapists and counsellors, and they are, with certain situations, they're very helpful. But there's a lot of other situations where I think people don't realise where coaches can also be helpful as well. So again, it's getting that word out to people, what we can do. And I think also people are less scared. With mental health, it's still taboo. People are still a bit like, oh gosh, go and see a therapist. There must be something wrong with me. And I think also with seeing a coach, it can be an easier route to be helping with your mental health. It's less threatening. And I know this particularly with the men that I work with, but often it can be an easier way to start talking and getting that awareness, as you were saying, Janine, which is at the heart of coaching, the awareness about your emotions and what your body's trying to communicate with you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Michelle. That sounds like an amazing course that you've attended, and yes, there are so many shades of different coaches, counselors, psychologists, therapists. So it really is about, I believe, finding the right person for you, and potentially, if you're interested in seeing a coach, having a complimentary session to see if the fit is right, because potentially not everybody is going to be the right fit. So ladies, what would you recommend to women who are listening, who potentially may need some support, may recognize that actually I am struggling, or maybe they've got a blind spot about struggling? What might be the telltale signs that perhaps seeing a coach or whoever, a specialist, can support them to be able to create the outcomes that they want to create?
Well, personally, I see some of the signs that come out within my niche and my area. Being strain on relationships is a first one. So even just saying, you know, how do you talk to your partner when they come home? That can be, that little conversation can be a little indicator there of how you're both feeling. Some of the other signs are around, you know, how are you feel, what is your mindset doing, you know, all the time. So where are you going with your mind? Are you, you know, sort of you taking control of that, you know? And I think that's where, you know, you mentioned CBT therapy, Michelle. It can be so helpful in terms of actually realizing that we have control over our thoughts, and that we can manage our thoughts, and actually taking an active role in that. So I think when our thoughts are really running away from us, as well, that can be, you know, we really can't almost get control of them ourselves, that we might actually need someone to help and see things from an outside perspective. So I think some of those are some of the main signs in my area is the sort of the mindset, a strain on relationships, and also sort of the continuing delays and things like that. Like often in it can be 2 years into a fertility journey when the impact of mental health can be quite severe. And I think the other thing to mention on that is one study actually also compared going through infertility with having a terminal illness in terms of the impact on stress, anxiety and depression levels. So it really is very serious. And I think that's the thing, is to actually really draw that line and say, this is actually very serious. This is, infertility, for example, is a disease. Even if you don't have a diagnosis or a tick, you know, in a certain box, that you do need support to go through that, and that it is out there and available for you.
Yeah, fantastic ideas about clues of that perhaps, yeah, there is an impact on mental health. And again, it's normal to experience that when you are going under so much stress and putting yourself under so much pressure, wanting something so much. So yeah, great signals. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say at one end is feeling of overwhelm, you know, when things are just feeling, I always say, like, for example, that inner voice, that it's getting really loud, because obviously a lot of us have that inner voice and it's actually normal, isn't it? But sometimes that volume is just getting a bit too loud, so that it's impacting our day, it's impacting what we do, it's becoming louder. So the sense of overwhelm. But also with coaching, we have to remember that you don't necessarily go at the point where everything is completely overwhelmed. Coaching is a journey, and I think I see coaching as throughout your life. I mean, I don't think necessarily people have coaches continually, but there's different points of your life. So also knowing yourself and just realizing that things are perhaps beginning to shift a little bit, and things are beginning to get a bit worried. So we don't always have to wait until the extreme. If we know ourselves well and we have that understanding, then perhaps when they're just the little signs where things are just, you know, maybe you're getting a bit anxious, maybe not sleeping so well. So perhaps if we can have that awareness before the build-up, but obviously coaching can be helpful at any stage, but it's about that awareness, isn't it? That things are just not quite as they usually are.
Yes, and having experienced myself going through perimenopause, potentially, you know, out the other side, if I feel under pressure, if I feel that sense of pressure, I will create heat within myself. And so it's a really good sign for me to actually, okay, what am I thinking about myself? What am I focusing? What am I choosing to focus on? What are my beliefs? So it's a real showstopper, so to speak. It supports me to take stock and have a look what's going on within me. What are perhaps the emotions that are going on inside, and to be able to take a moment to, again, take stock and be able to make different decisions, make different choices, choose to focus on different things. So So even though it's uncomfortable, I believe it's my body talking to me and letting me know that something needs to shift, something needs to change. Sometimes I choose to ignore it. Sometimes I take action. So
Yes. Yeah, but it's all, I think ultimately it all comes down to stress management, doesn't it? So it's really important to, and I believe as you do, and I always say that your body and those signs, those emotions, those feelings, it's like your body sending you a text message. So you can choose to read it or not. And so it's you trying to interpret. So I think particularly myself going through perimenopause as well, it is about stress management. And I'm sure it's the same if we look at all the issues. Ultimately, it's about listening to the signs and stopping or pausing or thinking about what is it that my body wants? What do I need to do? And the great thing about coaching is it can help with that awareness, because sometimes that text message is a bit garbled or whatever, but it's really tuning in. My body is not feeling right at the moment, and then thinking about, well, perhaps it's time for me to have that coaching or that support. What is it? So it's all about awareness, isn't it?
it absolutely is. And for me, it's about either seeking support through perhaps a coach. That would be my choice. But it could also be another trusted individual that you know. But as coaches, I believe we can also coach ourselves through what we're experiencing as well. But I know my body will speak very loudly if I don't listen to it. If I don't take action, it will turn up the heat, literally, for me to take a different choice, take a different path, take a different road. So there was something else that came up earlier that I thought, I just came back again. I lost the thought, but it came back up again. And so I thought I'd share it here, because I have decided to work with a personal trainer, and that's through the recommendation of a friend of mine, and who's about my age. I'm not going to disclose that here, what that is, but it's, it's getting on a bit. And she said that she had a discussion with this personal trainer who is a man in his 30s, but she said she was able to share with him what she was going through in terms of perhaps going on to post-menopause. And so she shared with me that, he seemed really switched on and open to that, which I thought was fantastic, that there is this movement of creating awareness about the things that are important to women, the things that it can impact our mental health and wellness and our well-being. So we trust. It's the beginning of more open conversations and communication and awareness.
Yeah. I think, yes, because I think that's important. And Karena as well, you talked about yoga and other things. We are lucky that there's so many great things that can support us, not only coaches, but things alongside as well, or, with the stress management. I mean, I bring the mindfulness into my coaching. Karena, you talked about yoga. The great thing is nowadays there are many things that can help to support those stress levels. So it's also tapping into what works for you, the connection with nature, gratitude, many things that can help us to feel more positive. So also having that awareness around what is out there to support me with my mental wellness and my mental healthiness.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, ladies, I'm guessing we're getting close to the end of our podcast together. I've really enjoyed conversing with you both. So I want to check in with you both before we close up. What would be your pearls of wisdom that you would like to share with our listeners, potentially those that are experiencing some of the symptoms that you talked about, Karena, of, being aware that, yes, my body is under stress. I am putting myself under stress, and Michelle with overwhelm, etc. So what would be your parting words of wisdom to our listeners, particularly the women who may be relating and resonating with what you've both shared?
Well, personally, I always say that infertility is a club you never wanted to join, but seeing as you're here, let's make it the best experience we possibly can. So I think that's the message, that there's things that we can do. Like Michelle said, there's tools that we can use, and lots that you can choose from. Like I always talk it like a buffet, a smorgasbord of tools, and you can choose what works for you. But knowing that using those tools, getting that support, being part of a community actually makes a huge impact on your mental health and can really change your everyday experience of what you're going through. And I think that's what's important, is that you're thinking that this situation is overwhelming you're feeling like it's very permanent, but often everything we go through is temporary, everything moves, and even infertility is temporary. So I think, we have to understand that there's tools there to support you whilst you are in this. And the mindset is that bigger vision, that bigger picture of your whole life, really, and knowing that things will move and this thought will come and go away, that infertility hopefully will come and, be gone from your life at some point. And the same with menopause. It's a stage we go through. And I think that's important to know, that there's support there for those stages, but we will move through them.
Yeah, and that echoes what I was going to say. I'm a firm believer of affirmations, and working with the subconscious. So one of the things that I did a lot of things during the first part of Corona on mental wellness, and I always used to end with this chapter shall pass, and just emphasizing that it's just a chapter in your life. And I think the other important thing is that it's normal what you're going through, because I think that's the thing. We feel that we're different, but when you get that connection, when you talk to professionals or you get into a group, you realize that yes, there are many other people in the club of infertility, in the club of perimenopause. So knowing that you're not alone.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. That's great to know that I'm not alone with my 20 years of coming through the other side. So thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. I really appreciate all the wisdom and learning and knowledge that you have shared today on such an important topic topics around women's mental health, specifically infertility, perimenopause, menopause, and we also touched on miscarriage as well. So I really appreciate everything that you've been able to shine a light on today. So thank you for doing what you do. And we trust that the listeners have enjoyed this session and somehow, some way, find their way to you if they're meant to, or whoever they're meant to. So again, thank you.
Thanks for listening. You can find out more about us on our website, www.empower-world.com, and on our social media networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Be empowered.